TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift's 3-time Grade 1 winner Golden Cents, Into Mischief's best son at stud. Look for his first crop 2-year-old selling at OBS March.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, we have one race to recap and 4 to talk about. That's right, I said 4 to talk about. We got a surprise race to talk about in here. You know, it was interesting when we were looking at the Fountain of Youth because it was really, we're going to get to see our number 2 horse in action, and he's a horse that had so much buzz. Everybody was really looking forward to it. He looked like he was coming into the race the right way. It was really his race to lose. And you said in last week's show, and I won't forget it, you said Chad Brown doesn't send out short horses. I got to tell you, man, I was really disappointed with the way that Good Magic finished up in the Fountain of Youth. What were your impressions?
Well, I don't know if he was short, but I do think he wasn't fully cranked by design. I mean, again, we talked about the idea of peaking in May and not in March.
Right.
So you see here, they're turning for home. He's nowhere in the picture.
Yeah.
But look at the pace there. It goes 23 and 4, and really sets a leisurely half mile. 48 and 1 for these type of horse at Gulfstream. Bye-bye. He's gone. I mean, a horse like that at Gulfstream never back up. Strike Power, brave effort even for him stretching out, but it was such a leisurely pace, no pressure at all. I mean, speed and rail with no pressure at Gulfstream through that opening half mile. Those horses never back up, John. I give this horse a lot of credit, Promises Fulfilled, in terms of getting a 97 buyer. I thought that was a little bit of an inflated number in my opinion, just looking at the times in the race. But let me just say this. They reported he trained well going into the race. We talked about that short run into the turn. We knew he was going to send. Where this race, to me, changed complex a little bit was when Machismo broke poorly. You know, he broke just a tad sluggish and bumped into the horse to his direct inside just enough to knock him off stride. That allowed Promises Fulfilled to clear. Machismo was not able to show his normal speed on the stretch out I thought you would see from him. So he sat more of a mid-pack wide trip. That allowed Promises Fulfilled, particularly when Strike Power was content on trying to stalk, to get that easy lead, and the race was over. Now look, let me say this about Good Magic, because he's the takeaway here. I thought he was in a good enough spot on the far turn that for a champion, you would expect him to reel in a colt like Promises Fulfilled. So I was a little you know, whether or not he beat him or not, I was disappointed in the finish for Good Magic.
That's how I feel.
Look, we've talked, we've done this show for 9 years. We've talked about it every winter. Speed, rail at Gulfstream is golden. So the fact that he wasn't able to close ground and win the race, and the other horse won the race, I get all that. But the fact that he wasn't able to show any courage in the stretch disappointed me a little bit, because I felt like he outclassed this field so much that I wanted to see him close the gap. But look, he may have just been a touch short here. I won't judge him fully until his next race. So relative to TCI top 10 and all that, I'm going to kind of keep Good Magic where he's at right now. I still think, you know, look at him coming in. The reason he had the buzz was he was out working Economic Model, in my opinion. They were working together, Economic Model. Older horse, always been a very good workhorse for Chad Brown that's worked against his best. Economic Model came back and won the House Hope, the Grade 3 very impressively. So I'm going to give Good Magic a pass because I've seen enough in the mornings to know that. I still think he's going to develop on, but that was not the comeback they wanted.
All right, well, let's look at the TCI top 10. I know you said already that you're going to kind of leave him where he's at.
Yes.
It's going to be interesting this weekend. Hopefully we see Bolt d'Oro if it doesn't rain. You know, we hear the trainer say that. You know, one of the takeaways that I see here in the TCI top 10, I know you already mentioned you're going to leave Good Magic because of his works, is just some of the young talent that we see in there, you know, and I see number 6 there, Justify. I know that he's been working really well. You were pretty impressed with his last work.
Well, I talked about the works with Good Magic. Go to XPTV, do yourself a favor, go to XPTV and watch this horse's last work. He works with Nero, who I think is a really good one-turn talented type horse, obviously the runner-up in the San Vicente, John. He is wide on the turn, has Nero as a target, powers by him, and just shows off his stride. A big stature colt. He looks like that Baffert big horse we've seen in recent years. You know, the Arrogates and those type of horses that are big frame colts, good way of going. Baffert excels with these types. The way he gallops out on his own, I thought was unbelievable. To me, he's a colt that, now it's interesting, looks like they're probably going to point for the Sunland Derby now. A big pot, he wins that race, he's going to get into the Kentucky Derby with the winning points there. But that puts him going to the Derby off of 2 starts, John. I mean, he would probably not come back and run after the Sunland Derby, because to me, if he did that, they'd have to put him on the road again, maybe like in the Arkansas Derby or something like that. And that would be a quick turnaround in 3 weeks, then another quick turnaround 3 weeks later in the Kentucky Derby. I can't see them doing that. So I think that they're all in with the Sunland Derby. If he runs there, he's going to be pounds the best in the Sunland Derby, no question about it. But he's probably going to win so easily in that race. He will have no seasoning, essentially, coming into the Kentucky Derby in 3 lifetime starts. He's a monster talent. And look, because there is such instability this year with Good Magic, nowhere to be found, there's enough instability that it sort of feels like the year, and we talked about this, the Bodemeister year, to where a young talented horse, whether that's Justified, Telekinesis, whoever it may be, might have a shot to run really big in the Kentucky Derby despite the experience and despite the history.
Well, that's what, one of the things I'm noticing, the more we do this show is that it really comes down to talent, and people are getting unconventional. They're doing things that are really different. If they feel like they have a 3-year-old that's got a ton of talent, they're not beating heads with everybody and doing it the hard way and having it be to where, they've all raced each other before they get to the Derby. And, that you brought up Telekinesis. Very interesting. We look into this weekend's races. Why we're talking about 4 and not 3 is because there's an allowance at fairgrounds. Well, they're going to put Telekinesis in against older horses. Tell me, that just seems really different. It's a unique approach to take a horse of a lot of talent and still try to get to the Derby.
We're seeing a lot of unorthodox things this year. And Justified, the reason you like him so much and why he's in that 6 spot for me is, he gives experience. And you mentioned the talent, but it's important to note that he's in Bob Baffert's barn. Nobody does it better than Bob. So if there's a horse out there with the talent enough to win the Derby in 3 starts, and he's in Bob Baffert's barn, you got to give the horse a shot in a year like this, in my opinion. So again, going back to this allowance race on Friday you referenced, this was always the plan for Telekinesis. Broke his maiden impressively. This horse has been in training since last summer. He's a big strapping 2-turn colt. I really have little concern about him stretching out. He had a wide trip, and why I was so impressed with his maiden race, he had a wide trip and still powered by a pretty experienced field of maidens down there at the fairgrounds. Impressively got a 90 Beyer speed figure. I think he's only going to improve around 2 turns. But this is an interesting test because he goes a mile and a 16th, check mark. I like that. He has tactical speed. I have no concerns at all about this race. He gets to be let up out of his own stall and its allowance company, but it is older horses. That's the caveat here. He's going to face horses like Silver Dust, who's 2-1 on the morning line, $500,000 son of Tappet, that ran in races like the Iowa Derby, West Virginia Derby, Arkansas Derby last year. Now, he didn't make an impact in those races, but he's got Beyer numbers up to at least around 88, around 2 turns, and he's a 4-year-old now. So, I think it's an interesting test for Telekinesis on Friday, race 3 at Fairgrounds. I expect him to pass that test, and I think you'll see him next time out. If he runs successfully on Friday, you'll see him, in my opinion, in the Bluegrass Stakes, where he'll have that opportunity to punch through, earn his way into the Derby. And unlike Justify, he won't have 2 starts. He'll have 3 starts coming in the Derby, but look, that's still a very unorthodox style for a late developing talented horse like that.
All right, well, let's move to some point races, and let's talk about the Gotham. It's interesting with the Gotham this year, we're seeing weather really, strong. They got nor'easters going on. It's just been a difficult weather, not just in Europe, but now here in the States as well, which is changing the plans of everybody. Yes. But let's talk about the Gotham a little bit. We have some horses that are dual entered into this race. It'll be interesting to see what your opinion is. Where do we see horses like Free Drop Billy and maybe Enticed? Where do you think they'll end up?
They want to run in the Gotham. I mean, Dale Roman scratched Free Drop Billy last week with the intent to run in the Gotham. Kieran McLaughlin, I think, wants, Enticed to get away from Gulfstream, where maybe his style isn't suited to that surface, and the fact that he's a New York guy, I think he wants this to be a Wood Memorial type horse. And we've seen that move in the past with Godolphin and Kieran, usually gravitating to New York in April for the Wood Memorial with some of their top horses. I think that's what they want to do, John. But obviously with the weather, the flight's been delayed. In terms of it's supposed to go yesterday, now today there's supposed to be a flight out, but that shaky weather sort of thrown a wrench in 2 major contenders for the Gotham that we'll just have to wait and see. They're cross-centered in the Tampa Bay Derby, and personally, I think it's funny. I think the Tampa Bay Derby is a better fit for both those colts to not have to fly up at this point, run around 2 turns, which is what I think they want. I personally think that the Tampa Bay Derby would be a better prep maybe for both these colts, but they would rather run in the Gotham. Be interested to see if they make that flight or they're going to have to van up instead for the Tampa Bay Derby this weekend. But let's talk about the Gotham for a second. Aqueduct used to be on the inner track in the winter meet. Well, now it's on the outer track, all racing year round. The problem for me, in my opinion, with the Gotham is now these horses are all turning back. I mean, you look at Friends Fire, he won a 1.8 miles in the Withers last time, a big 2-turn race. Now he's cutting back to a 1-turn mile. I don't like that progression personally. For a Derby horse in March, 2 races out, to have to turn back to a mile. Having said that, that's what this colt wants to do. I think he's a bona fide slingshot, 1-run closer. That 1-turn mile where he beat Good Magic in the Champagne. I think, no question, Friends Fire at a 1-turn mile in the Gotham is the horse to beat in here. But he's not without competition. His stablemate Dial Operator is interesting from the inside, I think, on the stretch out. A beautiful shot. I mean, he beat Nero, the horse that we talked about, working with Justify. Beat Nero in a maiden race, and then came back and won the Speakeasy Stakes over Mourinho. So we know Beautiful Shot is a 1-turn mile type closer too, very similar to Friends Fire. So this is an interesting race. I just don't like it as a Derby prep. I mean, Free Drop Billy showed last year in the Hopeful, I believe, at Saratoga that he can handle 7/8 1-turn situation, and the fact that he has a race under his belt, this turnback would probably be okay for him. But these are 2-turn colts trying to prepare for the Derby and the Classics. I don't like the 1-turn situation really for him or Enticed, in my opinion. So I'm interested. I would actually prefer them to run in the Tampa Bay Derby. Let's see what happens. But that 1-turn mile in New York, watch out for Friends Fire. That's his game.
All right, let's go now to Tampa then. Let's talk about that Tampa Bay Derby. You know, now that it looks like, you know, with the weather, we got a good shot that we're going to see these horses in here. This race becomes real salty. I mean, I see we got Tiz Mischief in the TCI top 10.
Yes.
You know, we got some really good horses in here.
Rosso's in the top 10.
We got Untamed Domain's going to run in the Tampa Bay Derby.
Yep.
You know, there's just a lot of talent in here. This track can be a little quirky. Tell me, what do you think? Who do you think is going to get Tampa Bay Derby?
The thing I like about this that the Sam Davis didn't have, it's a bigger field and there's speed in here. I mean, you look at World of Trouble, he's by Cantheros out of a Valid Expectation mares. I mean, there's really no better sprint pedigree than that really defines him as to me, a 7/8 type horse. He's very fast. So he'll be on the lead in here without question. The fact that you have a Razi-like move stretching out from 6-7 furlongs, drawing the rail, I think he's going to have to push out of there. I think there's going to be more speed in here because Flameaway's back. He was the soft pace setter, obviously won the Sam Davis last time. It's a bigger field. There's more speed signed on. And I think that's important for horses like Tiz Mischief, Vino Rosso, who's getting blinkers in here. Remember, he ran in spots last time out with Sam Davis. He's still trying to put it together. I think his future is going to be going further. He's a Curlin, I think, 1.8 miles. That's why he's on the TCI top 10. But getting blinkers in here with Johnny V and drawing just to the outside of Tiz Mischief is going to set a very similar trip in here, provided that Vino Rosso doesn't get too keen with the blinkers on. I think they both want to make one run and close in here. And Rosario is coming to ride Tiz Mischief, who's, again, has some really good works coming out of that 3rd place finish in the Holy Bull. So that's two, you know, horses that are in the latter half of the TCI top 10 that for me are closers with upside, and they both come in here in a race that I think there's plenty of speed to run at. So I'm really looking at Tiz Mischief and Vino Rosso. I mean, Quip, he's another WinStar horse. My people down in Louisiana say he's working fantastic. I think he's better when he's forwardly placed. I actually bet this horse a little bit in the Kentucky Jockey Club. I think he's better when he's into the race. I think you'll possibly see him in a stalking type trip in here as well. But it's a tall task going to Tampa, first time out on 16 off the layoff. I think the fact that Tiz Mischief, Vino Rosso have that experience, they're the two horses to beat in here, and I'm very interested to see also Untamed Domain. I think he's a turf horse. I think they think he's a turf horse, but turf horses can run at Tampa. We've seen it at Flameaway.
Right.
I can think of Java's War a few years back. It was a poly-track turf type horse that won the Tampa Bay Derby. So that surface can lend itself to a horse with a turf type pedigree. So I'm interested to see, because we know he has the class and he's a closer. I just personally think that he's not a true dirt horse. I give Tiz Mischief and Vino Rosso. To me, they're the two horses you really want to pay attention to in this race.
One thing about Untamed Domain, I remember you thought his sire was a turf horse too.
That's true.
Animal Kingdom, when he came out of Turfway.
That's true.
So when he went into the Derby. So I mean, the same trainer too. So I mean,
absolutely.
It is interesting to see him this year.
He deserves a shot. He's out of a Lear fan mare. You know, to me, there is more turf here, you know, and don't get me wrong, Animal Kingdom, you're right, you know, and he suited Churchill Downs and obviously came in off this polytrap prep in the spiral. So look, I give him a shot in here. I personally like the other two closers drawn to the inside here, but this is a good race. I mean, what if Entice shows up in this race? You know, what if Free Drop Billy shows up in this race? I mean, that's 4 good closers in here. You know, I know they don't want to run in here, but that's 4 really good closers. And I think you can really, particularly with a pace setup, I think you'll be able to discern a lot between Tis Mischief, Vino Rosso, Free Drop Billy, all similar running styles. Untamed, Domain, Enticed. I mean, if those 4 or 5 run against each other, this will give us a good gauge of what closer I think we need to pull out of this going forward to May.
All right, let's go out to California now, and let's talk about the San Felipe. We got Bolt d'Oro. He is our #1 horse on the TCI top 10. Joel, I've been waiting for this colt to come back. You know, I think he got a little bit snubbed in the championships for, you know, 2-year-old champion.
I agree.
I think this horse is full of talent. But listen, this is not a gimme. This is not a situation where we're talking about, hey, Good Magic looks like the best horse. He should win this race, you know, like what we saw last weekend. You got a horse in here. McKenzie's in here. You have some serious talent in here. I think this is going to be a tough race for him. What do you think?
I do too, and I don't like the fact he drew the rail. You know, he does have a speed horse to his outside, direct outside. That's Lambo, is probably going to push out of there, John. But the fact he draws the rail in here, you know, that run to the first turn is going to be very important to him. You know, McKenzie, I could see a situation where Mike Smith's going to try to, you know, stalk Lambo and really try to pin Bolt d'Oro in and make Javier come around. That's advantage McKenzie in this race, quite frankly. Let's talk about the last work from Bolt d'Oro. I've seen some good works. I've seen some okay works from him. I thought his last work was pretty good. It was a sharpener. They wanted to really get him on his toes, in my opinion. That 46 and 2 work with the stablemate, a target to run at. Really wasn't asked for much of a gallop out. Finished up a little in the lane. Was a sharp enough work for him to track that horse and finish up in that racehorse time and gallop out on his own without being asked. I thought was pretty good. It was a good short sharpener for him coming into this race. The class and the quality is all there. I just happen to like McKenzie a little bit in this race better because he's, again, had less hiccups coming up. He has some racing under his belt. I like where he's drawn a little bit better. The Baffert factor coming into this race. McKenzie, to me, is the horse to beat in here. But again, the reason I have Bolt d'Oro on the TCI, and I got him at #1 right now, is I'm still projecting down the road in May, that 1.25 miles. He still, to me, has the best overall profile. And you mentioned the wet track. Will he run if it's a wet track? I can see the concerns of not wanting to run him on a wet track. I mean, I think you'd love it. He's got a wet track pedigree, top and bottom, but I can see the concerns with, again, they're trying to get this horse to the classics. The focus on winning this race, again, is not as important.
All right. Well, thank you, Joel. Thank you guys for hanging in there. I know it was a lot of information, but listen, it's getting serious. We got a lot of good racing to talk about. Make sure you come back next week. We'll see how Bolt d'Oro does, and we'll see what happens with the TCI Top 10.